There we go. We are live. I know we have Cheryl and a few other people joining us in the live stream, so go ahead and throw some comments in there. Let us know you're here. My name is Pat, the Honey Guy. I'm the founder for school.com/bees. And this here beside me is my dad, Dennis. And today we're going to be preparing a beehive together. So it's a live beehive setup. Setup of a beehive live, not a live hive. That comes later when the snow's off the ground. But we'll have lots of that as well. So yeah, without further ado, I'll throw it over to my dad, Dennis, to introduce himself and get on with the show today. And then we'll have some time for some questions afterwards, or pop into school.com/bees. We always have time for questions there.
All right. Hi, guys. I'm Dennis. I'm a 7th generation beekeeper. So I've been at this for a little while. The family's been at this for a little while, and I've been at it for about 45 years, off and on a little bit. So yeah, like Patrice said, we're going to show you how we prep and assemble a hive so that when the bees finally come in and the weather finally breaks, we can actually get our bees settled into their new home very quickly, very easily, and within a couple of days, they won't even want to leave. Right now outside it's -1 today, so they're not ready to go outside into the yard yet. And if we do order new packages, they're not going to be coming in till March or April. So today we're going to cover, I usually assemble all my beehives together to make sure and have them ready so that when the packages and when the bees do arrive, I am ready to go and I just have to put the bees into the boxes. So I use Langstroth type boxes. There are very many variations of boxes, and we can discuss. I've got even different kinds of hives. I bought one from Turkey here the other day. That's a nice long round hive, so that's going to be interesting. I'll make sure and make a video of that when it's time to put that together. So today we're going to start by putting our bottom down. Now this is just a single bottom, as you can see, and it's got a little gap here so the bees can crawl along the bottom as they need. This part is where the entrance goes. This is the back, and you can flip it on both sides. This one has been used a couple of times, you can see. So this is a bottom. Now the quad bottoms, double bottoms, every kind of bottom in the world. People have experimented with a lot of stuff and you find what works for you. This I found worked really good when I was just holding 1 or 2 or 10 hives. I went to quad bottoms about 15 years ago when I started having a lot of beehives, and I started putting the beehives all together on one pallet. Anyway, so here's your bottom. We put our bottom down. I did pre-scrape it just so you know that we do have it scraped to make sure that it's ready for when the bees get in, and that way we can know that it's clean and ready to go. And then next thing we put down is a brood chamber box. Now this is a typical Langstroth box. I painted mine red, dark red, because I don't live in California. I live in northern Alberta. So even in the middle of summer, we can get a chilly night. And the red helps to attract the heat and helps the bees that are inside the box to keep the box heat. One of the things that a lot of people don't realize or don't know is that the brood has to be at 35 degrees all the time. And otherwise, if it goes down to 34 or if it goes higher to 36 degrees, it can actually change the brood. And you'll get bees that'll die young or they won't be able to fly, things like that. So I decided to go with a dark red. I do know one gentleman who had black boxes, but I think that's a little too hot. These were great to keep the heat inside the box and the bees happy. And they can still cool it down enough that it can actually help when it's 40 degrees outside in the nice sunny weather in the middle of summer, and they can cool it down. So we're going to put our box down first. And now we're going to start putting frames in it. Now, one of the first frames I put in the boxes is, we call it a pollen feed frame. And this is from a hive from last year that made a lot of extra pollen. I might not be able to see it. I can bring it a little closer to try. But you can see the cells are filled with pollen. So that's one of the first things you put into the hive is some feed pollen so that the bees can feed the brood as it starts to grow. And then on the other side, we have honey. Last year's honey, but it's still good. The bees will eat that. And that gives them a first start. So we put that in position number 1. Now I usually put 2 frames of filled pollen with feed as well, 1 on each end. Just something I learned when I was younger, to just try and make sure they have enough pollen around until the pollen naturally comes in from the trees and the flowers. So let's put it in the far position in the same side, in the same number, position number 1. Next, we put a feeder frame. Here it is. Now this frame is heavy with honey. Again, the same thing, it's honey from last year, but as you can see, it's very heavy, very thick. They'll turn that back into liquid honey, and they'll be able to feed themselves until they actually start getting honey fresh from the flowers around here. So we put that in position number 2. Now sometimes I'll do a second feeder frame on the opposite side, but I just don't feel like it right now. We got lots of time to build these. So the next frame we're going to put in after that is going to be a brood frame. Now you notice the color of the frame is black. That's because it helps me to see the eggs and the larvae when the queen lays the eggs and the larvae in the little cells. So I always put brood frames as black. These are Pirco plastic back frames. Easy to make, easy to scrape and clean up and then reuse. That's one of the reasons why I use it. If I use a wooden frame, I will get a black comb to put into it. And now you can get those in plastic as well. Usually we just save up the dark ones as the bees get dark in the hive, as the bees darken the frame as old as it gets, as the hive gets older and older. So we'll put that in next. And that's what I put in all the way out throughout the rest. You can see this one here has a little bit of honey on the outside where the bees, they like to keep a little bit of honey. They would lay the brood in the middle. Same thing on this side. And we just keep on going. Well, here's a wooden frame. You can see the wax has gone black from use. Did you know that the bees actually spin a cocoon inside those little holes that you make for them? That's actually what darkens the frame. That and the bees walking on it and the different types of honey can actually darken the frame a little bit. Nothing wrong with it. It's just as it gets older, it gets darker, and eventually you want to cull it out anyway. So there you go. We'll put another one in and we'll fill it out. My boxes are 10 frames large. My honey hive boxes are 10 frames. So there's 10 frames here to put in to fill it out. Now, the biggest problem I see a lot of people doing, especially you newbies, is they put in frames that are just brand new. They don't have anything on them. For example, like this one, you can see there's no comb built out. They put that in there and think the bees will just go ahead and just make all the comb and do it really quick. It takes them time. So don't try. Let me start that again. Try to find yourself some built-out comb. Maybe not a lot, but at least a few to put into your box, into each hive, so the bees have some place to start putting the honey and the pollen and everything else they do, just like they use everything, so that they have a place to put the honey that they're bringing in. Because remember, it's not honey they're bringing in, it's nectar. And that they got to dry it down to make it into honey. I've had a lot of people put in just fresh foundation combs into boxes, and then a month, 2 months later, their bees are dead because they could not build out the comb fast enough compared to what the honey was coming in, compared to what they needed to eat right away. So if you have your first hive, you can put in fresh foundation only, but you got to feed the bees sugar water or honey water to help them build that comb up as quickly as they can. But I recommend, if you can, find yourself somebody who has some very nice built out comb honey already ready and willing to sell you a couple, and put those in your brood box to start, so that they have some place to start working with and not just foundation. So we're going to fill up the rest of our box here. See, here's a newer foundation one. It's nice and yellow. That was just put together, built last year or two, and the bees built it up. And now it's a brood frame. We can put that in there. The queen will fill it out. Here's one a little bit older. And finally, the last one, again, another dark Pirco frame to work it out. All right, so there's 10 frames in there now. So the next thing you put on there is a queen excluder. Now, you can, I do 2 brood chambers per hive. So I don't stop at just one, but for today, I'm just going to show you some stuff. I do that because I want to make sure and give the queen a lot of room to lay out eggs. And then when I have my second brood chamber on here, every 10 day, 2 weeks or something, I'll actually rotate them. So number 1 on the bottom will become number 2, and number 2 will go on the bottom. And that just drives the queen wild, because she likes to build a pattern of eggs inside the box in a ball. And it helps to get increased population, I think. And it's been very effective for me. So if we were in the middle of summer, some people go with a 1 brood chamber. I go with the 2. But if we were in the middle of summer and I was about to put another hive together, and I usually do this for every hive, is I put a queen excluder between the brood chambers, 1 or 2 high, and then on the honey box. So this is just a plastic queen excluder. You can get metal, wood frame with metal, different kind of variations, whatever works for you. Just make sure you get the right size. There are sometimes I've made this mistake. I have 10 frame, but I bought queen excluders for an 8 frame box. Oops. I was lucky enough to be able to trade them back and buy the 10 frame ones. The width was proper for it. So then we'll put that on there. And then I'll take a white box. Now this is a honey box. This is my preference only because white boxes are for honey, so the frames are honey frames, and red boxes are for brood, so the frames that are for brood go in red. You can have any color under the sun. Color doesn't really matter too much. The bees, I think they do use color a little bit to help them find their way home, but they do a lot of work on their orientation flights to get to know where their home is. So color is not all that bad. I've even got schools that have painted boxes that we do presentations for. They've painted the boxes, make them look really nice. But I don't find that it's too critical on the color so much, other than like I was talking about earlier about how much you want to play with heat. I like to keep the bees warm. I like the brood chamber to be at that 35 degrees so that the bees, the larva and the pupa and everything can stay at a nice consistent, and the bees can manage it and work it really well. That's about it. So we'll put our nice, and again, it's a 10 frame. This is a lot of work. I'm probably going to go to a smaller box, a half size box, but I still have to do the 10 frame across because I am consistent through all my boxes as 10 framers. This is heavy when it's filled with honey, so that's why I'm going to go probably here real soon. I'm getting older, my back is hurting, and I'm going to probably go with a half size box, only in this depth, not anything else, just that. So we'll put that. It's a nice new one, as you can tell. It's only been in use for about a year. Then we're going to put some honey frames in it. Same thing again. Pirco makes some nice frames. These ones are white because that's just the way to do it. And that helps me to identify what frame is going to be a honey frame and which frame is going to be a brood frame. It just makes my life easier in that way. So we start putting that in there. And there's no critical thing about these. These are purely just empty frames. Here's an older one that's probably going to go into a brood chamber this year. But for now, for the example, we can show it. Here's one that's just foundation. The bees have started building it up. So we're going to put it in the middle so the bees continue to build it up. And then I'm just going to grab some more frames to fill it out. I've got 9 in there, but my 10th frame went disappear. Okay. Anyway, so now I've got 10 frames in there. That's a honey box. And now when the bees fill it up, I just take it off, put another one on, and we're good to go. If I leave that one there and I put another one underneath to keep filling, I do like a lot of that bottom putting on new boxes with, and that keeps the bees just filling up the hive. So then the next thing I do is I put an inner cover on. Now this is from personal experience. This is an inner cover with a feed hole and a top entrance for the bees to go back and forth in and out of. This I found is the better. I know there's people out there who do use tarp, roof shingle, sorry. They use plastic bags, black plastic with a little bit of insulation in between 2 sheets of black plastic. Any kind of inner cover, I do recommend them, because when you get in the middle of summer and it's time to pull the honey and take the box off, it's a lot easier to scrape and clean if you have that inner cover. That's why I use the wood, because the bees will fill this up in the gap here with comb, sorry. And then I'll just scrape it off of this into my box, and I got actually extra wax to make candles with. And then in the winter and the fall, if I want, I can put a feeder pail on here and feed them. It's easy enough. So here's an inner cover. And then I put a lid on. Now this is the last component, basics for what you're going to do for bees. This is a migratory lid, and I'll show you why. It's because it has 2 end caps, one for the front and one for the back. The side doesn't have anything, because if I have a quad pallet with 4 hives next to each other, it'll interfere with the other hive next to it. So I could put this on there, and for the next hive on my quad pallet, it goes right there. That side doesn't bother. I do have telescopic lids, which extend down across the sides, and that works fine. I did that for the first, 5 years, like I said, of having bees and having my own bees on my own farm. And it worked fine. But when I moved to quad pallets where I was putting 4 hives, 2 side by side, 2 side by side, I needed to go to a migratory lid so that could come in, because the bees were on pallets. The forklifts could come in and lift them up, and the lids would not bother each other, and they would actually help seal each other. And then that's it. Later on in the summer, when it's time to put a second box on, I'll lift this box, I'll put another one underneath. And remember, I do a 2 brood chamber system, so I usually have 2 red boxes put together. All right. If anybody has any questions, now would be a good time.
I had a question come from the community. They're unfortunately not able to be here right now, but what is your least favorite and most favorite part about doing this whole setup process?
I can't think of anything that's my least favorite. The least favorite is the fact that the bees died and I have to scrape everything out and clean it out and get it ready for the next. And the fact that the bees died is always sad. The favorite part about it, if you're going a single hive in your backyard, it's very simple to assemble, very easy to use, and you don't have to do anything really complicated about it. For a commercial beekeeper like me, it's actually was easy to expand up into higher and higher production levels once I had this system together. When I moved to a quad pallet system where 4 hives were on a pallet, I just had to change the lid to a migratory lid from a telescopic lid.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I do want to say hi to Jake and hi to Cheryl. They said hi in the comments in the chat.
Hi, Jake.
Cheryl?
Hi, Cheryl. Thanks for joining us. Feel free to get a hold of me anytime and message me anytime. I'll answer any questions, and hopefully we can help you get together and get your bees together if you want some.
Well, I know Cheryl is in our community. She's from the UK. She might be interested in getting some going for the kiddos. We tend to have a lot of beekeepers from the UK joining us for some reason. So maybe that's something we got to take a look at, see maybe some more specific stuff for them in the future. But Cheryl,
well, it kind of does. Sorry?
I was just saying Cheryl said hi. She said it's all fascinating. What were you going to say?
I was going to say it kind of does make sense with the UK because Canada is tightly clustered with UK, and a lot of the books that I read and learn from were from UK ministers, for example, who had bees on their church grounds.
Interesting.
So, yeah, I know. I was quite fascinated. Brother Adam is the most famous one that I know of off the top of my head. I read a lot of his stuff to try and find ideas on how to improve things for us and do things better.
I'll give it a second, see if Cheryl had any questions, or if Jake is still there had any questions as well. I'm pulling up what I got from the community. There are more people. Those are just the 2 that I could see because they commented. So if you guys wanted to comment and say hey as well. We do have school.com/bees. Get in there. You guys can ask questions anytime. I guess similar to that last question that I had, a question that I get a lot is like, how much time does beekeeping take in a week? And like, what's your favorite part of beekeeping again?
The amount of time a beekeeping can take in a week is just a couple of hours for one hive. But it's been so long since I had only just a few hives. It's really as much time as you want to put. Usually January, February, we're not doing too much because the bees are asleep. Up here in our environment, in our climate, the bees are hibernating for the winter the best they can and trying to survive. Excuse me. So I don't do a lot of work. It's usually bookkeeping and selling honey is about all I do in the January, February. March, we start scraping and cleaning and making sure that the boxes and the frames are all nice and clean and ready so that when we do put bees in, everything's ready to go. April, usually by the end of March and into April, we start getting our packages of bees in if we did order any bees. Or if there's a nice warm day, we start opening the ones that are overwintered with us to see how they're doing, see if they're alive, see how they're doing food-wise, because we can put food in their sugar water and help them to survive until the first flowers start to grow. I'm always a big fan of April showers, May flowers. That's probably the best time of the year is in when you start getting the first rains and you start getting the first flowers at the end of April and into May. That's the best time of the year, I find. I love going out and just seeing the bees get to work and seeing them do stuff and getting to look at what they're pulling in, pollen and honey wise, nectar wise. You can identify the flowers and the plants. And then in the summertime, that's the busy time because that's when, excuse me, the nectar is flowing and the bees are pulling in so much. Usually by the beginning of July, we start pulling honey and start extracting. So not only are you working outside in the field, you're working inside, getting it all filtered and packaged. And yeah, so you're running back and forth. You're running all over the place. And then September, October is ramp down time. We're getting them ready for winter, treating them for anything if we need to. And then by the end of October, October 31, they're wrapped and that's it. You don't touch them at all the rest of winter. November, December is when you try to re-clean all your shop and your garages and everything and get it all nice and clean and put away. And yeah, that's the whole year. So depending on how many hives, it can be very busy or very slow.
Which I think that's a good point to note, because like Serenity had seen our content in the shop and she was like, "Oh, that's so overwhelming." It's like you don't need to have it. We don't even have really the big massive commercial
Yeah.
setup. We're just somewhere in between that. So that's Cheryl's question: is what would be the best way to start with bees as a non-commercial? Just getting into it maybe as a hobbyist, not even wanting to go to farmers markets, really, just getting a beehive in the yard.
Yeah, the best way is to do what I did. Is I mean, I had the experience growing up in the bees and working for my uncle and my grandfather, so I got lucky there. But the best thing I would recommend is just get your first hive. I actually, the number one step I generally recommend is find yourself someone local who has bees already, and start making friends with them and going and helping them in their bees and seeing how things work and stuff like that. And don't even buy your first hive. Wait about a year. Wait until the next summer after to buy your first hive. And then you can actually start seeing things. Get your first package. Don't do it too early in the spring, because in the spring you can get some funny weather where you're all of a sudden. I remember one year I put 100 queen cells into nuke boxes, and 97 out of 100 of them died that night because Mother Nature decided to have a snowstorm, and it was July 30th. So don't do it too soon, but by the end of April, you could get your first hive, put it in your boxes, and ask your friend you're helping who's to come out and help you out and see how you're doing and help you choose where your location is and stuff like that. And then put your first hive in. Don't be surprised that if your hive dies that next winter, because you've got a lot to learn. Like I said, I've been at it for 45 years. I started working when I was 12. I'm almost 60 now. And even to this day, the bees, every time I open up a beehive, it's always something new to learn. Sometimes it's nothing too critical, but I just love opening a hive and looking inside, and love sitting out in front of them and watching them do their stuff. But you always learn, always learn. It's an everyday thing. And then from there, try to build up to 4. If you have only one hive, if it dies, you can't work with 0. Once you have 0 hives, you have to buy a new package and wait until it comes in. But if you have 4 and 3 die, you still have 1 that you can divide up and put new queens in and try to rebuild again. I don't recommend. Up to about 10 or 12 is hobby. After that, once you go above that into the 20 range, you're actually somewhat commercial. There's a lot of work to do and you've got 20 hives to take care of. That's when you start thinking about farmers markets a lot more. I saw another question there. Was there another one?
Oh, she was just saying that's a lot of bee experience. I do want to say too, Cheryl, if you're interested, we have lots of beekeepers, like I said before, who are from the UK. So we got a few people in the community, potentially. If you were interested in getting something going, we could connect you.
Yeah, I've never met an unfriendly beekeeper. We like to talk to people. We like to meet people. We're just like the bees. We get along with a lot of people. We might disagree. You walk into a room of 100 beekeepers, you'll get 150 different answers because there's different opinions. But we generally, you walk up to us and say you're interested, we'll generally help you out.
Well, and with that, we're at our half-hour time that I had set aside. If you guys have more questions, you can join us at school.com/bees. Next week, I'll be coming up with a live stream for, what did I call it? Last question here from Cheryl. Actually, first, I'll throw this to you first, Dad. What type of honey do you make? And maybe just explain the different types of honey, how that works.
So the type of honey we generally make depends on the farmers around us. We had last year a gentleman who seeded on a quarter section of land a lot of sweet clover. So we ended up with a nice flavored sweet clover from, reminds me of my childhood because we used to get nothing but sweet clover all over the place. And then in the fall, we would get a lot of alfalfa. So that's what we did this year. We did a lot of sweet clover. We had the end of the season with some alfalfa, and then the goldenrod and a lot of those late blooming flowers came in. This last year, the canola, we didn't have it very close, but was close enough for the bees to go to. And canola is designed to attract the bees. But the canola didn't seem to do very good this year. So we didn't end up with a lot of canola, canola is an okay honey. But it is very, you got to be very aware of how to work with it. Canola will actually granulate and harden in the hive. So once it's in, the bees have collected the nectar and started making it into honey, you have to get it out of the beehive within a couple of weeks. Otherwise, it'll granulate and go hard inside the beehive, and you won't be able to extract it. And then when the bees try to eat it in the winter, they won't. It takes too much energy to reliquefy, and they'll actually starve to death. So that's one of the problems with canola, and you have to be aware of that. The different types of honey range according to the floral source. Around us, there's lots of canola. We do have a little bit of sweet clover here and there. Goldenrod in the fall is really nice, although we don't usually get enough to actually extract it and make it into a product, a packaged product. But you get honey. The most famous one, as soon as I say the name, I'm sure somebody's going to say, oh, I know that kind, is Manuka honey. It seems to be the one that everybody's talking to me about lately at the markets and everything. That's a product of a special kind of plant flower. I think it's a tree, if I remember right, out of New Zealand. And the reason why it's so famous is because it has huge medicinal properties. It is used in the medical field on bandages to help heal things. And it's also extremely expensive. If I was to buy a barrel here, it would be $10,000–$20,000 in Canada, if I could even find someone from New Zealand who would even try to sell it to me. They have a very good customer base in the medical field, I think. You can get all different kinds of honeys, all different kinds of colors, and all different kinds of flavors. I love the sweet clover, but that's the one I grew up with when I was living up here in Jerusalem in northern Alberta. It was sweet clover everywhere. The land was just being opened up for farming, so the guys would plant oats and the sweet clover would come next. And yeah, it's a beautiful honey. But I've tasted honey from Australia. I didn't like it. I was told it was from the eucalyptus tree. I didn't like the taste of it, but the lady that came to visit us with her kids one day, she said, oh yeah, no, that's from Australia. That's a beautiful honey from Australia. And then she told me it was from the eucalyptus. So I've got honey from Hawaii. Comes from different kind of plants. It tastes great, but it's not very sticky. It's runny like water. And that just shows you how different environments can affect things. Because if you think about it, in Hawaii, they have very high humidity levels and very high temperatures. So for the bees to bring the nectar down, to bring the moisture content level of the honey that they're getting there, to bring it down to 18% or something like that is very hard. So they end up with very liquidy honeys. I remember putting it on my toast and it just drizzled everywhere. And I'm licking my fingers and licking the toast, and it was very nice honey. It tasted very good, but I'm a little bit arguing on that one in that I don't think it's honey. I call it syrup more than anything. But it tasted beautiful. And the guys, you can't change the humidity. It's the climate of the area. Yeah, and the pollens are the same thing too. You can get huge different variation in the pollens. We got little strawberry plants that start growing early in the spring up here, and the pollen is not red or yellow, it's white. And if you go to dandelions later on, when the bees are going to the dandelions, the pollen coming off of that is orange, not yellow. So you can get a huge variation in color, flavor. It really is what your local environment can give you.
I know I always love seeing the pollen traps. Just a big bag of pollen and it's all different colors is really cool.
Oh, yellow, green, white, red, orange. Yeah. I've been looking for some black that comes from, what's that? It's a grain. Oh, my brain's missing me there. It's something they make in Manitoba. I
Well,
can't
it's a
think of the name.
good spot to end. Dennis will remember the name and post it in the community eventually when he remembers it. So we're gonna wrap up this live stream. We're starting to do live streams weekly. So for everyone watching or recording and watching live as well, every Wednesday or Thursday, my mom, my dad, myself, my brother, one of us will be going live to chat with you guys about something. Next week on Thursday, can't remember what time in EST or whatever, but next Thursday, I'll be talking about what's sucking the life out of honeybees. So we'll have lots of fun stuff to talk about then.
Oh, yeah.
Jump into the community, get those questions in if you can't join us live to come in. It was really great to see you guys. Yes, Cheryl, thank you. Great to see you live as well. I was really, really excited to chat with you guys. Hopefully you got some value out of what Dennis had to share here today. We hope to see you guys in the community and then asking some more questions, seeing you on the next live stream. Soon, we'll be helping you guys become beekeepers as well. We've got some exciting stuff to roll out there if you're interested in that. So just stay tuned. And yeah, we'll see you guys on the community.
Bye, everybody.